We are part of the Ag and Environmental Research team at Cotton Incorporated, and the pest management team includes the two of us and additionally Dr. Galen Morgan, who works in soil health and weed science. And then we have other research areas that overlap with ours, such as breeding or ag engineering. We are primarily the pest management team. Next slide. And it's our mission to advance the efficiency of cotton production by generating and communicating innovative research and practical solutions. And it's our vision that cotton growers will be enabled by this research to be more economically viable and resilient. Next slide, please. And we have two ways of funding research. The first is the state support program. It's comprised of 7.5% of the annual producer assessment collections, and it's devoted to what pests are important in that specific state, along with other issues that may be happening in that state. And it's comprised by board members only from that state, and they make the decisions on what projects to fund. Next slide, please. The core research program addresses larger issues. They tend to be belt-wide or a bigger region. And these priorities are set by the larger cotton board, also in cooperation with those state support committees and growers across the United States. So everyone has feedback and the ability to direct this program. And then the individual project directors select which projects to fund and the amount. Next slide, please. We have 5 key focus areas for this year going into this year, the AERD does. And just today, don't try to read the slide. We're talking about pest management. And the 2 ways we're trying to help cotton producers with pest management is prevent losses and limit inputs. Okay, next slide. Okay, I'm going to go into the entomology of the program, and this is my area. And our priorities are those pests that drive the highest losses. So those consistent bugs that you're seeing year after year, thrips, ligus, bollworm. Additionally, we've got emerging threats. So deer is relatively new to this program. I'm going to start by talking about animals, so don't get confused. They're all animals. I'm going to talk about deer first. I am the entomologist. You didn't sign on to the wrong meeting. Cotton dacid and cottonseed bug. And I'm investing in those programs that are integrating new technologies. We're trying to move pest science forward. And also identify things that you may invest in that aren't making you money, because that's important too. Next slide, please. Starting off with deer, if you're not in the Southeast, so this problem has somewhat evolved. You know, there are areas of the Mid-Atlantic, there are areas of the Mid-South, and there are probably areas of Texas that have encountered a similar issue with vertebrate feeding. This is seedling cotton, and what you're seeing on the left is where deer had access to the field. This is about a 40-acre field, if I remember correctly. And on the right, it's caged off where the deer can't reach. It's pretty obvious what's been happening. Next slide. This is another example of what you can see with deer feeding. They're coming out of those woods. There is no cotton for the first 20 feet of the field. Next slide, please. And something that may be less noticeable is maturity delays. So the slide on the left, we're going back to that cage study, you have protected cotton, and the slide on the right, you have not protected cotton. So that continual feeding has been promoting vegetative growth, and it's delaying your fruit from maturing, keeping you in the field longer. Next slide, please. And when it comes to the bottom line, it's causing a yield loss in some fields. And this is dramatic. Again, these are the best photos we had. And I thank Lance Wortman and Dr. Levesta Hand at the University of Georgia for this study. Next slide, please. And our key findings so far is that economic damage has been quantified. And you might be like, okay, so what? Well, we need to know how much they're costing you before we can recommend how much you're able to spend, right? I don't want to outspend what my losses are, right, to control them. And so in a moderate situation, so 30 to 70% of plants fed on some point in the season, in a severe situation where 70 to 100% of those plants have been fed on, you're losing yield. There are repellents on the market that can work. They tend to be short acting, so there's not a lot of residual rain and can wash them off. And it's something that would have to be reapplied. So the current research is examining how we can incorporate things like tank mixes, maybe trips that you're planning over the field to spray anyway. How can we integrate those repellents into that kind of program? In addition, there's some variety work going on at the University of Auburn with Jenny Kopernik, and she's looking at what varieties deer prefer less. So given the choice, they're going to eat some cotton over other cotton. And starting next year, we're going to look at what happens when you have a whole field of that less preferred cotton. Additionally, in South Carolina, USDA ARS
administration has argued that.
Sorry about that. So in South Carolina, they're looking at cover crops, and there's some fescue grass blends that deer hate so much, they won't eat that seedling cotton if the cover crop is still in the field. So that's interesting research. And that, like the variety work, will move to farm next year. Okay, next slide. Moving on to insects. Some of you have probably heard too much about this, and some probably logged on today to hear about it. The cotton jacid was new to us last year in the Southeast, though it did technically arrive in 2024 with a couple detections through APHIS. And it's native to the Indian subcontinent, but it's been spreading globally. It's spread throughout Asia, Africa, and into Puerto Rico, and then us last year. Next slide, please. It was detected in 2025 in cotton in July. And by October, we had it in 9 states. And you can see that map down in the bottom right corner. And that indicates everywhere that we found it in a commercial or research field by the end of 2025. The adults look like the picture on the left. They're quite small, but those dots are visible and distinctive. Okay, next slide. This may be a picture that you've all seen, and it's a scary one. And this is from Dr. Scott Graham and Isaac Escobar in an area that's really close to between Alabama and Florida. And they work together on this project. And this is a progression of symptoms in one field over 4 days. And that's it, right? The leaves desiccated, they dried up, that cotton is likely dead, not going to come back. And it happened over a long weekend. Okay, next slide, please. However, you can prevent losses by spraying, and that's where we are really in the research program for this pest, is the firefighting stage. So how can we stop it when we detect it in the field? Currently, if you look at the University of Alabama's cooperative extension site, they've got a list of what's labeled. You do have a lot of options that are out there. Some are softer than others. And as of today, no one should be spraying in the United States, except for probably Isaac Escobar, who's in Florida and working on some research plots. So they have been detected. The alert went out end of last week, but they've been detected in very, very small numbers. So for example, Georgia, as of today, has found 5 individual jacids in okra and Tifton. Isaac has picked up some nymphs in a research field in Quincy, Florida. And Dr. Scott Graham at Auburn in Alabama has picked up a couple of adults. With 8 hours of looking, they found 1. So this is nothing to panic about, but something to be aware of. And maybe if you were an area affected last year, getting products ready, start upping your scouting game. Okay, next slide, Caitlin. So does it matter yield-wise? It does. If you're in one of those high-pressure situations, again, we've got a field, this is in Florida on the left, where no control was applied, compared to cotton on the right that had 2 insecticide sprays. Next slide, please, Caitlin. And the yield loss is variable depending on where your pressure is. And the pressure was highest in Florida, then Georgia, then South Carolina, and the yield losses on this slide reflect that. So what it's showing is the percentage of loss in untreated plots versus the control. And then, for example, in South Carolina, 16% was the average yield loss across a lot of experiments. Georgia, 25%, Tifton, 46%. And all these trials have one application, so you can save a lot of cotton by scouting and spraying this insect if you have it. Okay, next slide, Caitlin. What did we find out last year? So we found out that it's an economic pest. Scouting methods. So what we recommend you do is look at least 25 leaves per field. You want to look 3 to 5 nodes down from the top of the plant and look on a main stem leaf. Flip that leaf over, count any on the bottom. Try to do that in 25 plants per field, looking at that one leaf. And if you've got a leaf or more, it's time to spray. You want to use an insecticide that's labeled and effective. They do work. Some varieties are less preferred. So if you're planting a hairier variety, and I don't think any of our varieties are that hairy, to be honest, but we did see that side by side, a smoother leaf variety is going to be more preferred by this insect over a hairy leaf. Fertility may play a big role. We're starting that research this year. If you're using too much nitrogen or too little potassium, you could be in a lot of trouble with this bug. And the National Cotton Council and Cotton Incorporated are working with the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service to limit the spread. So you may have heard of it traveling around the country on hibiscus. That was true in 2025. We're working very hard to not allow that to happen this year. Okay. And just entomology overlooked by the numbers, we have a total of 62 projects, 3 working groups in the Southeast, Mid-South, and Southwest. And I presented you our newest research on deer cotton acid. I was going to give you some stuff on the cottonseed bug, and I apologize I didn't get it to our reviewers in time. The important thing to take away from this right now is we have researchers and government agencies watching cottonseed bug. So far, it's limited to California in ornamental and residential settings. It has not yet moved into cotton. And I think that's it for me.
Sorry, I was trying to get the controls up so I could start speaking. So now we're going to move into a little bit on plant pathology and outreach. Thanks, Sally, for that excellent overview of entomology. It's a great segue into what's kind of going on into these phases of plant pathology and our outreach scenarios. So just to kind of overview a little bit of the 2026 progress up to date is much like entomology, we work pretty exclusively in regional working groups to really maximize the efforts and outputs that can come out of our research. And some of these regional working groups are in the data analysis phase. And this past year, we have initiated a nematology working group with field trials. And so we have foliar disease working group, we have seedling disease working group, and we have a nematology working group at this time. And more than 10 full-length publications and extension articles focused on these working group outputs were published since 2025 into 2026. So just in these last 3 years, there have been an exceptional number of publications and outputs just from these working groups. And really, the emphasis of these is on stakeholder engagement with the coordinated research that is really allowing for the rapid advancement of our scientific understanding of disease and how it's impacting individual states, localized regions, and what is really coming down the home front. As far as priorities in plant pathology, really the evaluation of the current and emerging disease threats has been the focus, including looking into FOV4, which has been a key disease for more than a decade now. And looking into the distribution and spread, there are projects that focus on this, as well as some newer problems dealing with aerulate mildew, looking into what types of losses we are actually facing with the presence of this emerging threat, as well as how fungicides impact disease, looking into seedling disease and its distribution throughout the cotton belt. If you have any familiarity with some of the seedling disease work that has happened, it's been going on for more than 30 years, but there has been a renewed focus into looking at how some of these seedling products can help to mitigate disease, but also what types of diseases are more present in certain areas versus others, so that more tailored solutions to reducing seedling disease can be catered to specific regions, specific states, and we can get more of a field level focus. And then from a nematode perspective, there are emerging issues like the guava root knot nematode in some states, which monitoring efforts as well as understanding rotational impacts have been part of efforts for the last few years, but also better understanding of some of our key threats throughout the belt, like root knot nematode and reniform nematode, what those actual impacts are from a field perspective and how they're actually spreading, and what some of these newer varieties are doing. This is part of the research that is coming down the pipeline. Now, as far as resistance management, this is some of the publications that have come out. There's information on what types of varieties are available with nematode resistance that is available, as well as information on what types of fungicide resistant isolates of pathogens are actually present. So how can we better reduce disease impacts throughout the regions? And overall, the research priorities really have focused on how do we improve access to information, and this really leads into some of our outreach efforts. So kind of like entomology, just by the numbers, there are 48 PIs that are working on 61 projects and 3 key working groups. And within this, there are some genetic focused projects. And some of these are working in collaboration with breeders, but some of them are focused on understanding pathogen biology so we can reduce the impacts of disease on the plants themselves. And 54 of these 61 projects are 3 years old or less. And most of these, a vast majority, are collaborative and multi-institutional. As I already mentioned, from these working groups, the efforts of one state are multiplied, and applied management decisions can be implemented across multiple environments. To the right are some examples of some of these outputs from multiple experts across the region that have really come together to find common solutions for cotton growers. And these are some of those timely, locally relevant outputs that have come through the crop protection network that are focused solely on cotton. So if you would like to go to the crop protection network website and check out any of these, they are publicly available and they are all peer reviewed by extension experts throughout the cotton belt. Moving into 2027, continuing that coordination of working groups, the nematology working group, especially looking at how varieties and nematicide efficacy changes across the belt, because that's a big question that comes around. One field might perform one way, another might perform the other. So seeing how well some of these products work, as well as where there is consistency or not. Working with breeders to advance some of the breeding lines with resistance to things like aerulate mildew pathogens, especially because some of these genes have been identified and reported during this 3-year project period. And as I already mentioned briefly, the seedling disease project has really allowed us to develop a better understanding of what diseases are present in the belt. And from this, a group of researchers have been able to develop an emergence risk model, which will be in beta testing in this coming season. Beyond this, creation and distribution of regional output materials for all of ag research funded projects, aligning with respective working group goals, not only in pathology, but in nematology as well as entomology. And all other areas of ag research are a key priority moving into 2027 to grant better access to this information that is being produced by the researchers who are really working for cotton producers. This is Part of this is being done through some e-newsletters that have been developed and are continuing to be developed through Cotton Cultivated. And some examples of these came out last fall. You don't have to read this whole slide, but there are a lot of different topics that are coming out, such as understanding how to make planting decisions and how they impact vigor and yields, using RFID technology in production, managing plant populations, raniform nematode on cotton. There's all kinds of great topics. So if you want to know more about this, feel free to sign up on Cotton Cultivated at cottoninc.com/register. And we'd love to have you start receiving our newsletters. Some of these also have come in print resources so you can better understand what some of ag research is doing for cotton producers. So we are working for US cotton producers, and we really want to make sure that all of the research that is being conducted gets into the hands of growers and the appropriate people. And so all of this information is available on cottoncultivated.com. With that, I think on behalf of myself and Sally, I want to say thank you for taking the time out of your morning to listen to all things pest and pathology. And at this time, I think we'd be willing to take any questions.
Thank y'all so much. That was a really great presentation. We're going to go ahead and stop the recording before we